So coming up this weekend is going to be UFC Fight Night Adesanya versus Imavov taking place in Saudi Arabia, and in my opinion this is actually a really good and pretty solid fight night card, and I'm really looking forward to watching the card. And I know that I am pretty late on my predictions for this one. I do typically put out a prediction video the week before when we do get a break, but I did break down the LFA and I did break down the PFL last week, and I guess you could say that took out my UFC prediction breakdown time because I was breaking down those other cards. So I just didn't really have the time to do anything until now, and next week will also be pretty late too because coming up next weekend I actually have a national sports tournament for a sport that I'm actually very active in, very competitive in. So that should be pretty big. It's taking place, of course, in New Zealand, where I live. And I know some people might think it's boxing. I haven't boxed for a long time. I haven't boxed since, I think, 2023 now at this point. It's been a long time, and maybe I'll put the gloves back on to challenge Betsan at some point. But yeah, it's been a long time since I have been boxing. So it's not that, something else completely. But yeah, just to talk about this card, I think it's going to be a good one. We Want Picks, of course, has got a bunch of bets on this card. Me personally, despite actually having quite a bit of success on the last card, well, a lot of success on the last card and just a little bit of success on the card before, I'm not going to be betting on this card. I'm not going to be betting on 312. I just genuinely do have a lot going on at the moment, as I am planning on practicing a lot for my tournament coming up. Another thing as well about this card is there has been a lot of cancellations on this one. Muniz had visa issues. I think they're going to rebook this one. The Abdul Karim Al Sawaidi fight has been cancelled again for the second time against Oki. I was going to pick Abdul Karim Al Sawaidi in both of those matchups. And the rumor is, word on the street, is that apparently Hamdy Abdelwahab versus Jamal Pogues has been cancelled. So I'm going to go through this one very quickly just in case it has. I have been picking Jamal Pogues for a long time, but the more I think about it, despite Hamdy Abdelwahab only being 3-0, what I at least saw out of his UFC fight recently is that he's going to be aggressive and he's going to come forward. And although I think that Jamal Pogues is actually just a better overall fighter, because I do think, despite getting proven wrong a couple of times, his boxing at heavyweight is actually pretty good, but I don't think he throws enough volume, and I just don't see any aggression out of him. Whereas with Hamdy Abdelwahab, we know he's aggressive, we know he can wrestle, he's an Olympian, he's a big guy. I mean, he failed a USADA test and has been out for a long time now at this point. So, I mean, he's going to come out aggressive. And I'm going to pick Abdelwahab for that reason. The lines are close because it's a close fight. My pick has switched. I was on Pogues or Pogues, I think is how it's pronounced, all week. But now I've switched to Abdelwahab. Very quick breakdown on this one, just because I'm pretty sure this fight's been cancelled. Let me know if that's true or not in the comments. Now we can move up to Bogdan Grad fighting against Lucas Alexander. Odds very close on this one. I think that the odds actually are even right now, -110 either way, but I'm still going to go with Bogdan Grad. It's kind of interesting with me and Lucas Alexander because I actually thought he looked really good and really technical against Steven Petersen, but then you have to put a gigantic asterisk on that fight because after Steven Petersen lost that fight, he pretty much posted that he hadn't trained for 6 months. And if you watch that fight, you can kind of just tell Steven Petersen was very out of shape. He just didn't do anything that Steven Petersen is pretty well known for, which is just kind of coming forward like a zombie and barely scraping through pretty close decisions. He just didn't have any fight in him at all, and it did make Lucas Alexander look good. Alexander, I think, is the more technical fighter out of these two. I think that Bogdan Grad, despite being a former lightweight, sorry guys, is a pretty compact dude at this weight class, and I think he's going to come forward. His striking isn't super technical, but he can wrestle on occasion. The problem that I have with Grad in some moments is I think he tries to do too much. He throws a lot of spinning kicks and spinning attacks for absolutely no reason, but he is coming off a war against Michael as well, which is a pretty decent win, and as well has fought since then. I think that Grad's going to come forward more. I think he can pressure Lucas Alexander. Another thing about Lucas Alexander is when he's fighting guys that actually have trained, he has wilted and he has looked bad. Chika Saragi knocked this guy out. I think that Bogdan Grad can come forward, mix in the wrestling and the striking, pressure Lucas Alexander, and have a pretty good performance here as a very slight favourite. Jasmine Jasudavicius now fights against Mayra Bueno Silva. This fight's going to be at 125 pounds. I keep triple checking this because I need to confirm if that's happening, because Mayra Bueno Silva is now moving down to 125. And I think it's an odd move for Mayra Bueno Silva. Now, I've never really seen Mayra Bueno Silva as a small bantamweight. I kind of thought that she's always fit in. But the thing about Mayra Bueno Silva is, I feel like what we've seen in the past is that cardio is a bit of a problem. Now, I know that something was overturned recently against Holly Holm, but that was because she had asthma, so she was taking medication for that or something along those lines. And now she's cutting down to 125. We know that the cardio's been a problem in the past. I think that the cardio is going to be even more of a problem now. And I just think that even then against Jasmine Jasudavicius, Mayra Bueno Silva is going to be the significantly more dangerous fighter, where she's shown that she does have power in the hands, she does have very good grappling ability, she's submitted a lot of really top fighters at 135 pounds. Now moving down to 125, it'll be interesting to actually see this, kind of just with, like, I guess the skill difference, I think you could put in quotation marks there. Like the guys in particular from the lower weight classes, like Mikhail Pereira, come up from 170 pounds, just dominated like 3 or 4 middleweights super easily. We've seen guys come down weight classes before and lose, like Jose Johnson, who I think is a bantamweight, but he tried it at flyweight anyway. Jasmine Jasudavicius, Canadian national wrestling champion, she's come forward. I think that she does still have a very big hole in her striking game, but it is getting better. It was exposed by Tracy Cortez, but that was a long time ago now. Jasmine has been improving. She's going to want to wrestle here. The main problem is, in this matchup for Jasmine, she needs to avoid the submission attempts because they are going to be coming. Mayra Bueno Silva does have very good defensive subs. She does have a guillotine in there. She does have an armbar in there. So it'll be interesting to see how she deals with that. But I think that Jasmine can go out there and just win the minutes by controlling on top. Maybe finding some success in the striking, but I'm not really expecting it. And I think that she does win a decision here in the first women's fight, I believe, under the UFC banner in Saudi Arabia, which is pretty cool. Now, Terrance McKinney is now fighting against Damir Hadzovic. I think that this is a good fight for McKinney. I'm actually very confident McKinney wins this fight, but the reason why it's not a super high confidence pick, of course, is that McKinney does have quite a few massive problems in his game. The first one is a chin issue. This guy's chin is gone. He is a highlight reel, except for on the receiving end. We've seen this guy get knocked down, I believe, 5 times now, maybe, yeah, 5 times. And like quite a few like knockout of the year contenders. I think like Ismail Bonfim knocked him out with that flying knee. That was arguably knockout of the year of 2023. When Rozenstruik knocked him out with a head kick, that was one of the best one of the best KOs of 2024. Do I think that Hadzovic is going to highlight reel him? I'm going to say no. I mean, Hadzovic is a come forward, pressure forward striker that shoots for a takedown on occasion. That's Damir Hadzovic's game. I don't really think that Hadzovic actually presents that much of an issue against McKinney, even though we have seen in the past, strikers can give McKinney problems because his striking is just like not technical at all, and that was really exposed by Ismail Bonfim. There's been multiple breakdowns of it at this point now where McKinney was so off balance by Bonfim just completely outclassing him that he was off like 2 feet at some point. Sometimes he was jumping to throw across. So he's got no technique whatsoever, but he does hit really hard. Hadzovic is nearly 40. I mean, I think he wins. The thing about Hadzovic, though, he's got bad takedown defense. Shout out to BetSam for messaging me this because I was all in on the McKinney KO. And BetSam was like, Hadzovic has been known for bad takedown defense throughout his career, especially recently. Maybe McKinney by submission could be sneaky because this is kind of a must-win for McKinney. I know he's fun, but at the end of the day, he is like a low-level lightweight, and I'm sure they could kick him out at any moment if he was to lose to Hadzovic. So I think in this case, McKinney might wrestle. That's something that he does have his base. Of course, Michael Chiesa coached him in wrestling in high school. So maybe McKinney wrestles here against Hadzovic. Maybe he locks up a sub. But one thing that we have said about McKinney, we've seen him in the past, is that when he fights these low-level guys, he typically knocks them out in the first round. I'm going to pick McKinney to win by KO in round 1, but that submission could be there. And there could be pretty crazy odds on that prop if you wanted to chance it with the takedowns that McKinney does have in his arsenal. Now, Shamil Gaziev fights against Thomas Petersen. I think it's a good fight for Gaziev. You know, I was pretty high on Thomas Petersen. And then he lost. Of course, he lost to Jamal Pogues. And he just kind of looked... I just don't know how to say it nicely. He just looked a bit pathetic against Pogues. He really did. And then, of course, he did beat Muhammad Usman. But, you know, like, all he did was wrestle and... kind of, that's all Petersen does. That's all he does. He was an LFA prospect that I was really high on. His one loss before losing to Pogues was against Waldo Cortez Acosta, who turned out to actually be pretty decent. You know, he has got a couple good wins. But yeah, Petersen just doesn't have a well-rounded game at all. Thomas Petersen only has wrestling. His striking is very basic. He's got no striking defense at all. The head movement is there, but it's just forwards and backwards. He doesn't really have like much athleticism to him. And I guess you could say the same about Shamil Gaziev, because when Shamil Gaziev was coming up, I was saying that there are quite a few things that I think you're going to have to watch out for, and you need to be prepared to fade Gaziev at the right time. And of course, I did pick Gaziev. I did, didn't I? I picked Gaziev to beat Rozenstruik. I didn't think that was the time. I was wrong, but I was right about a couple of things. Gaziev's fundamental failures in the past are his striking defense, because it doesn't exist, and his cardio, because it's not very good. And both of these things can actually be showcased in his win over Darko Stosic, because yes, he knocks him out in the first round, but in that fight, Stosic knocks him down. Stosic knocks him down before, of course, Gaziev knocks him out. And you can see Gaziev even started to breathe pretty heavily towards the end of that 3 minutes. So yeah, Gaziev, of course, there's problems there with him, but I think that against Petersen, he's the better striker. I don't think Petersen can take Gaziev down. Now, it is always interesting when heavyweights get taken down, because what we've seen from Jailton Almeida's come up, and even, I guess, like a couple of years ago now at this point, Alexander Romanov's come up in the UFC. Of course, now he's signed to the PFL, but Romanov's come up in the UFC, kind of showcase that when heavyweights get taken down, they don't have anything off their back. So maybe if Petersen gets takedowns, it could be interesting as a big dog, but I think Gaziev goes out there and I think he wins. I think he might even get the finish, because Gaziev does hit pretty hard. This is a guy that knocked out Darko Stosic, by the way. Muhammad Naimov now fights against Kaan Ofli. This is a fight which I am picking Naimov in. I am somewhat confident in him. He is one of my top 5 confident picks of the card. Of course, you can see that on that We Want Picks website. And I also kind of can see some ways to win for Kaan Ofli, but I just think that this is too much too soon for Ofli. And honestly, if I'm looking at this matchup, I think it's a good matchup for Naimov to get back in the win column, because he's from Tajikistan. The UFC knows that there's actually a big market in that country, just because people from that country truly are, like, really, like, I don't know what the word would be, but just really passionate about fighters from their country. And Naimov is one of the better ones. You know, this is a guy that was a world Taekwondo champion. And was it Taekwondo? I'm pretty confident it was Taekwondo, but he's a world champion in a striking sport. And he throws a lot of kicks out there. He throws a lot of leg kicks out there. What does Kaan Ofli do? Not defend leg kicks. It's kind of the story of the fight, really, in my opinion. I think that Naimov can go out there. I think he can actually be the much better striker in this matchup against Ofli. Ofli's going to want to wrestle, but Naimov has shown that he does have good takedown defense. Of course, he did lose to Felipe Lima on short notice, but I picked Lima in that fight. Lima's going to be a real prodigy at 135, man, and when he can fight at 135, because of course he fought Johns at 145. But moving on, Naimov's shown he's got good takedown defense. Of course, he knocked out Jamie Malaki. I mean, snatched his chin. Malaki probably won't be the same. We've seen him get KO'd so many times now. Beat Nathaniel Wood, but he was cheating a little bit. And then Eric Silva was what it is. But I think Naimov, I think he goes out there. I think he knocks out Ofli. I think it's just going to be a good performance for Naimov to go out there and have an opportunity. This is a fight I really struggled with to pick. And I ended up siding with Mike Davis, and I will be honest, this is just a fight that I'm just going to stay away from. Now, as I said in the intro, I'm not really going to bet on this card. If anything, I might just jump on the Terrance McKinney sub prop for like a little bit of a flyer. But yeah, I think that in this matchup, I don't think it's as bad of a matchup for Ziam as people are saying it is. You know, Ziam has come back into the UFC, and he's looked really good, man. Like, you know, he went on short notice. Where was it against? Was it Jai Herb? No, it was Mikhail Figlak. I think. I could be wrong, but he looked good against Figlak, and Figlak now, of course, has lost since then, kind of showing that he is just really a one-trick pony. But since then, he just retired Matt Frivola. Like, I would be shocked if Matt Frivola fought again after that knockout win. That was my KO of the year. I think that Matt Frivola's career is potentially over. But for Ziam, the way that he fights is he just is another like guy from France. I know that this is just kind of probably getting old at this point, but everyone from France, they fight the exact same. They're a low volume defensive striker, and they just aren't aggressive. And Mike Davis is good. Mike Davis, I feel like, is an underrated fighter. He's got on a very sneaky win streak. He doesn't fight that often, which is kind of annoying, but I guess maybe he's getting injured all the time. I think he is. He beat Mason Jones, and Mason Jones has looked amazing in Cage Warriors recently. just beat Natan Levy, which was a pretty big win at the time because Natan Levy has been kind of coming up as a pretty good karate, also grappling prospect. And he also beat Borchev, but Borchev just kind of is one-dimensional. Mike Davis is one of those fighters that can strike if he needs to. If he's fighting someone that's worse at him at striking, he will just strike against them. But if he's fighting against someone he can take down, he'll wrestle against them. And I know that Ziam just went out there and he just beat Mikhail Figlak, who is just a wrestler and a massive wrestler at that at 155. Mike Davis can do it all. Mike Davis can wrestle. Mike Davis can strike. If anyone's going to throw more volume, it should be Mike Davis because, as I said, for Ziam, he's a French low-volume striker. That's kind of what all of these guys do. But yeah, I think that Davis can go out there and just have more options to win. I don't feel confident in it at all. Maybe it's just a little bit of bias just from that brutality of that knee KO, but I'm going to side with Davis in this matchup. And now we can move up. Side Numagomedov versus Vinicius Lockdog Oliveira. You guys know that I love Vinicius Oliveira. I'm a big fan of him, and he has been proving me wrong quite a bit recently, actually, because, of course, he just smoked Ricky Simone in what was an incredibly impressive performance. I did not see him just beating Simone just round to round, bell to bell like he did. That was actually very impressive for him to do that. And I've been a fan of Vinicius Oliveira for a long time, since before he was even on the UFC, since before he was even on the Contender Series. This guy is fun, and at 135 pounds, there is, like, not many people I think that you could find that would have more power in their hands than he does. But I feel like he finds a lot of his power from his wildness. Vinicius Oliveira, he's going to go out there and he's going to swing from his waist, just absolutely throwing loose bombs, like loose hooks and stuff, and he's just going to go out there, man, and he's really going to try and take your head off. His fight on the Contender Series is kind of an example of this. He just spent the whole time just loading up from the hips, overthrowing everything, just going absolutely nuts, and of course he ended up getting the KO. I think he's fun. He did show a lot more composure against Simone, and then of course against Sapai he had a decent performance, but he ended up winning it by KO in the end. Simone I thought was going to be his nightmare matchup, because Simone can box, not very well, but he can, and he can wrestle very well, and I thought that was going to be Vinicius Oliveira's biggest weakness, and he defended Simone's takedowns and just absolutely beat him, bell to bell on the feet, despite having not very good technical striking, really. He's just so awkward. He's almost like the Yuri Prohaska of 135 pounds. I don't know if I can say that, because Yuri does have his own unique style completely, but Oliveira, he might be one of the closest we've got to it. But he's fighting against Said Numagomedov. I thought Said beats Jonathan Martinez here on this matchup. And I think some people agree, some people disagree. But I thought Said had done enough. You know, I just thought Said did more damage. It's damage-based scoring criteria. But anyway, Said Numagomedov, he's a striker. But he does have some really nasty submissions. Of course, he has gone on that guillotine run, which really started off with the, I guess you could almost say, the career-ending submission win over Cody Stamann, because Cody Stamann since then just hasn't really been the same guy. I mean, ignore the two wins, but this is Stamann's like big opportunity on a pay-per-view card, and just hasn't really made it happen since then. But Said Numagomedov, good striker, good defensive grappler, had a bit of a guillotine run actually, because he subbed Said Yakub Kakramonov, and then Kakramonov allegedly started insulting a manager's or some UFC staff, I think it might have been, but someone's family was getting insulted by Kakramonov, which is why he's not in the promotion anymore. But yeah, Numagomedov, good striker, technical striker, more technical than Oliveira, and he can wrestle. He doesn't really wrestle, but he can. And I think just the fact that he's going to be the more technical striker, and he's also going to have the wrestling grappling advantage against Oliveira, I think that's what it's going to come down to. I think that Numagomedov can go out there and win the decision. That was a lot of rambling. We got there in the end. We can now move up to Pavlovich versus Rozenstruik. I'm picking Pavlovich. Am I picking an underdog? I was picking an underdog because Kareem Al-Sawaidi was a dog against Hoki. But I feel like this might just be an underdog-free card for me now that I really go through it, just to spoil the next two picks. But I'm picking Pav here. Rozenstruik's a popular dog, but it always just comes down to a couple of things with me. Pavlovich recently has shown a lack of aggression, which is a shame. Of course, he lost to Tom Aspinall. Happens, and then he fought his friend Volkov, and he didn't want to fight Volkov. Didn't show any aggression whatsoever. A sad performance from both, to be honest, I would say. But Pavlovich fights the same in all of his fights, but that most recent one when he was fighting a friend in Volkov, where he will go out there and he'll be aggressive, and he will just throw down with you and he'll be in the pocket, but because his arms are 84 inches long, or his wingspan, his reach is 84 inches long, um, you can't touch him. You know, like it's even when he knocked out, was it Tai Tuivasa? Tai Tuivasa was throwing down, but he was throwing his hooks back, expecting Pavlovich to be there, and he's not, because he's got such a long reach. And he does that against everyone. And I don't think that Rozenstruik, despite having an incredible kickboxing background, I think 88 wins, 18 losses, something ridiculous like that, or maybe it was 88 wins, 8 losses. I know it's something insane, but Rozenstruik, despite his kickboxing background, I do think that someone can pressure Rozenstruik. In fact, I think that it has actually happened before. I mean, of course, Ngannou did it, and Ngannou just ran forward and knocked him out pretty quickly. But I know that, yes, it was the Volkov fight where Volkov came out forward. Similar stylistic matchup in the striking, like somewhat, but not really. I guess that might have been a bit of a reach, but you guys understand what I mean. Volkov come forward and just kind of blitzed him with volume. And I think that Pavlovich can do the exact same thing, which is why I'm picking Pavlovich here. I think that Pavlovich's title run to the top starts again on this card. Then we move up to the co-main event. I am picking Shadaputdin Magomedov against MVP. I know that this is picking against something very important in the We Want Picks world, which is, of course, the lock of the week. And I really am tempted to pick Michael Page in this fight, because when the fight was first announced, I did think, oh, this is a really just kind of an odd matchup, but it's fun. I might pick MVP because MVP just frustrates everyone. But really thinking about it, I need to just kind of keep riding the bullet train, I guess, is what I'll say there, until it's done, because I do think eventually, of course, I say this about most prospects that I think that are slightly flawed, there will be a time to fade Shadaputdin Magomedov, but I just don't think it's this fight. And I say that, and then of course MVP might go out there and win, but the reasoning that I give for this one is I don't think that MVP just knocks out Shadaputdin in one round, or with one shot, I should say, especially. And I know he destroyed Guti Yamauchi's leg, but that was an injury, and he's knocked people out with one punch in the past, but they were 40-year-old men. I think that Shadaputdin Magomedov is going to go up there, and he's proven me. I think I picked Shah against Petrosian. I'm pretty confident I did, but I could have not. I don't know. But he just proved a lot of people wrong in that one. Whether it was me that picked him or not, I think a lot of people did. Petrosian's a similar matchup in the just pure striking to MVP. Now, I know a lot of people are going to strongly disagree with that, but when it comes down to it, Petrosian and MVP are both pretty long technical strikers. MVP just has a lot of different things about him because he has his hands by his waist, and he throws kicks and he throws punches from all different angles and stuff that other people can't really replicate. Maybe MVP is the closest thing we have to Yuri Prohaska. I don't know. And he does showboat a lot in there. But I think that Shadaputdin Magomedov just kind of seems like the guy that just isn't going to give a shit, to be honest, about any of that. And I think he is just going to kind of come forward, despite that not really being his main style. And I think he is going to pressure MVP. MVP's moving up from 170. And you could use the logic that middleweights compared to welterweights do just suck. Like, they are just terrible in comparison. But I also feel like this is just an odd move for MVP, because he said it's going to be a one-off fight at 185 pounds. MVP, he's not a small guy for 170 by any means whatsoever, but I really would have felt a little bit more confidence inclined to pick him if this was a permanent move, because then I'll know that he's putting on a bit of muscle, or he's putting on just like a bit of like decent weight to put on the extra 15 pounds that it's going to be. You know, that's like, what's that, like 6 kilos? That's a lot of weight to me. I mean, probably a lot of weight to you guys too, I guess, but yeah, I think that in this matchup, it's going to be a striking matchup. These guys aren't wrestling. And Shadaputdin Magomedov, I think, in the pocket is actually going to be a little bit better. Maybe a hot take there, but we have seen it before. And I think that the leg kicks are going to be money against MVP, because MVP relies on his movement so much, which is so odd. And Shadaputdin Magomedov's just going to chop those legs, and I think that's why I'm going to pick him. And also another thing as well, if it's a close decision, it's in Saudi Arabia. Despite what the UFC tells you, Shadaputdin Magomedov can fight in the US. Dre Miley has done it for years. Shadaputdin Magomedov is going to get a close decision if it does go to the judges' scorecards. Now, Israel Adesanya fights against Nassourdine Imavov in the main event. I have been vocal in the past. I'm not a fan of Israel Adesanya, but I just don't see him losing this. Like, I feel like the thing about Izzy is, as unlikable as he is as a person, and as boring as his fighting style truly is, he still is one of the best middleweights of all time. And you could argue that he is the best middleweight of all time. It really is up to him and Silva. And of course, Adesanya beat Silva, but yeah, this and that. Say what you want, Adesanya is one of the greatest middleweights of all time. And I think in this case, despite losing to Dricus du Plessis, he looked good in that fight. You know, I did pick Adesanya to beat Dricus du Plessis. I thought that the striking difference was going to be too much. And I would argue that I was right in that one. Dricus du Plessis did, for the most part, march forward, come forward, just throwing hooks, shooting his takedowns. Gassed out in 2 rounds, or at least looked like he gassed out in 2 rounds in typical DDP style. But DDP eventually just started landing big shots in Izzy towards the end of the fight. Of course, before the finish as well, he did it. And it kind of just looked like DDP just must hit that hard, you know, because we've never really seen Adesanya just get rocked like that, like DDP was able to do it to him. And I think in this matchup, I just can't really see Adesanya losing to Imavov. Now, it is kind of tough because Adesanya's coming off like a really bad performance against Sean Strickland. Like, this is definitely the worst performance of his career. In my opinion, losing to Sean Strickland like that, just by getting pressured the whole time, is not really a good look at all. But I don't think Nassourdine Imavov can replicate that in the striking. Yes, does Imavov have pretty solid boxing? Do the highlights look good? Yes, they do. But I just can't really see him losing. I can't see Adesanya losing a striking matchup against Imavov. And that's what it comes down to, really. Because I do think Adesanya is going to defend the takedowns of Imavov. Did DDP take down Adesanya a couple of times? Yes. Yes, he did. And in fact, actually, it was probably the worst we've seen Adesanya's takedown defense look. Aside from maybe against Jan Blachowicz. But I think against Imavov, I don't think that Imavov just kind of has the pure wrestling to just go out there and just take down Adesanya over and over and over again. Because Adesanya has, and I think I don't know if this is an official stat, I could be making stuff up, but I feel like Adesanya does have some of the best takedown defense in the UFC, some of the best takedown defense, at least at the top of the level of the UFC, and that's why he was so dominant for so long, is because people just couldn't take him down. And on the feet, he just kind of leg kicks and jabs his way to a decision. And I think that's kind of what's going to happen here. It kind of really is just to me. I just can't see Adesanya being that washed. Because I feel like if he loses to Imavov, if Adesanya loses to Nassourdine Imavov, I feel like most people in the top 10 right now would actually beat him. And I think it's that simple. You know, I think if he loses to Imavov, Anthony Hernandez probably beats him. Caio Borralho definitely beats him if he loses to Imavov. You know, I just kind of think of matchups like that for him. It's like, Adesanya needs this win, because if he doesn't win this fight, I mean, he's going to get sent, he's going to get sacrificed to someone that's up and coming anyway. But I think Adesanya does win. I would be kind of surprised if he lost, and he's not one of my most confident picks on the card. But yeah, I don't think it's a great matchup for Adesanya, but I also feel like it's a step down in competition. You know, I know Strickland, and we all laugh at Strickland because, you know, he does have an odd fighting style, but he has beaten good guys in the past. I mean, he beat Izzy, I guess. I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain it, to be honest with you guys, but let me know what you think in the comments below. 28 minutes for 11 fights. I don't think that's too bad, even though I did skip the first one. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you guys in the next one.